that gave us tears of joy, cheers, all the excitement of right before he passed, he got to see his son do something good.
Bubba Watson never fit the mold. In a sport built on discipline, structure, and repetition, he was a self-taught, feel-based player who relied on instinct rather than instruction. He never had a swing coach, never followed the textbook fundamentals, and never cared about the mechanics of a perfect swing. And yet, despite breaking all the so-called rules of professional golf, he became a two-time Masters champion, one of the longest hitters of his generation, and a player known for pulling off shots that defied logic. But this same unorthodox style would be his greatest strength and biggest downfall. He went from fan favorite to one of the biggest falls from grace the sport has ever seen. From self-taught prodigy to Masters champion, from fan favorite to media outcast, from PGA Tour legend to live golf defector, this is the story of Bubba Watson, the unconventional genius of golf. Bubba Watson wasn't raised in a golf academy or a country club. He wasn't surrounded by elite coaches or given expensive lessons from an early age. Instead, he grew up in Baghdad, Florida, a small town with no real connection to professional golf. But he didn't need any of that, because what Bubba had was creativity, raw talent, and an obsession with hitting a golf ball. His father, Gerry Watson Sr., was a Vietnam War vet. He wasn't a golfer, but he saw something in his son's love for the game. So when Bubba was 6 years old, his father handed him his first club, a cut-down, second-hand 9-iron, and let him figure things out on his own.
My dad, he could see one of his dreams or his son do something great.
No lessons, no instructions, just Bubba, a bucket of balls, and his imagination. And that's exactly how he learned. He would spend hours hitting wiffle balls in the backyard, experimenting with different spins, angles, and trajectories. He didn't care about the perfect swing plane or textbook fundamentals. Heck, he didn't even know what they were. He just wanted to see what he could make the ball do. By the time he reached Milton High School, Bubba's ability to shape shots was unlike anything his coaches had ever seen. He could hit a 300-yard drive before he even turned 16, but he wasn't just a power hitter. He could hook and slice the ball at will, shaping it around obstacles with ease. His raw talent earned him a scholarship to the University of Georgia, where he played for one of the best collegiate golf programs in the country. He became one of the star players for the Georgia golf team and helped them maintain their reputation as one of the best college golf teams. But even in a structured team environment, Bubba refused to conform. While other players spent hours fine-tuning their swings with coaches, Bubba stuck to his own method, playing by feel, relying on instinct, and hitting shots no one else would even attempt. It made him unpredictable, it made him inconsistent, but it also made him one of the most naturally gifted players in the game. When Bubba Watson arrived at the University of Georgia, he joined a program known for producing PGA Tour talent. His teammates were technically polished, disciplined, and dedicated to the traditional fundamentals of golf. But Bubba, he was none of those things. He had the longest drive on the team, he had the most creative shot-making ability, but he also had zero interest in swing mechanics and a tendency to let his emotions get the best of him. He wasn't just playing against opponents, he was playing against himself. Sometimes this would work against him since he hadn't mastered his game just yet. After college, Bubba turned pro in 2002, but his road to the PGA Tour wasn't immediate. He spent 3 years grinding on the nationwide tour, now known as the Korn Ferry Tour. Here is where he was really tested, struggling with consistency and learning how to navigate professional golf. One week, he would hit towering drives and fire at every pin, and the next, he would implode with wild tee shots and missed putts. His playing style was high risk, high reward, and early on it led to more frustration than success. It caused concern for people who were invested in him. If this continued on the same path, he might have become a young star who burned out quickly. Bubba Watson came very close to winning his first major at the 2010 PGA Championship, falling just short in one of the most dramatic finishes in recent history. With a score of 11 under, Bubba held the clubhouse lead, only to be matched by Martin Kaymer after Dustin Johnson's controversial penalty ruled him out of contention. That set up a 3-hole aggregate playoff between Watson and Kaymer, played over holes 10, 17, and 18. All day, Bubba had been launching monster drives, and the playoff was no different. On the short par 4 10th, he nearly drove the green, setting up a birdie to take a one-shot lead after the first hole. But Kaymer responded on the par 3 17th, making his own birdie to even things up. It all came down to the 18th hole, essentially sudden death. Off the tee, both found the rough, but Bubba, being Bubba, went for the green. He took the aggressive route, a high-risk, high-reward shot, but this time it didn't pay off. His ball found the water hazard, handing Kamer the advantage. Now, needing to hole out from the bunker just to extend the playoff, Bubba nearly pulled off the impossible. His shot hit the flagstick, dropped in, and then cruelly popped back out. Second place at a major would be devastating for most players, but Bubba's mind was elsewhere. His first words after the loss? Did I make the Ryder Cup team? He had, and when he got the confirmation, his smile was as big as if he had won the tournament itself. For Bubba, some things mattered more than trophies. But after that, everything changed. Bubba found himself in another sudden death playoff at the Travelers Championship, facing Corey Pavin and Scott Verplank. On the first playoff hole, he made a clutch birdie putt, securing his first career PGA Tour victory. The moment was deeply emotional for Bubba. He fell to his knees in tears, knowing exactly what this win meant. This win meant more than any of the spectators could have known. Unfortunately, his father, Gerry Watson Sr., was battling late-stage throat cancer, and Bubba had always dreamed of calling him after a victory. That night, he finally got to make that call.
Without them, I'm nothing. Yeah, my dad's battling cancer right now. Dad, I'm praying for you. I love you.
Just a few months later, Bubba's father passed away. He would never get to celebrate another win with him. For many, this would have slowed them down, but he was no ordinary player. Bubba kept playing, kept grinding, and just 2 years later, he would find himself on golf's biggest stage, Augusta National. By 2012, Bubba Watson was already known as one of the longest hitters on the PGA Tour, but he wasn't seen as a major championship contender. His game was brilliant but unpredictable, capable of producing jaw-dropping shots, but also complete meltdowns. Luckily, that changed at the 2012 Masters. Throughout the week, Bubba's aggressive style put him in contention, but it was the final round that cemented his place in golf history. After 18 holes, he found himself tied with Louis Oosthuizen, sending the tournament into a sudden death playoff. On the second playoff hole, Bubba's tee shot veered wildly into the trees on the right side of Augusta's 10th hole. The crowd gasped. His ball settled in the pine straw, deep in trouble. By any normal standards, Bubba should have been finished. Louis played his ball safe and practically had the win in the bag. For most players, the only option would be to chip out sideways and try to save par, but Bubba Watson wasn't most players.
The guy named Bubba is sport's biggest star this morning after a wild and thrilling finish on the second hole of a sudden death playoff at the Masters Golf Tournament.
Instead, he envisioned something absurd, a 40-yard hook with a wedge, bending the ball around the trees and back onto the green. The kind of shot that most professionals wouldn't even imagine, let alone attempt. Bubba didn't just attempt it, he pulled it off perfectly. The ball landed softly, rolled within feet of the hole. It was one of the greatest shots in Masters history, and the moment that changed Bubba Watson's career forever. Moments later, he tapped in for par and won his first green jacket. Tears streamed down his face. He hugged his mother, his emotions overwhelming him. He had just won the Masters in the most Bubba Watson way possible. This was more than just a win for Bubba. This was for every moment his late father and mother believed in his talent and skill. It was a moment of pure emotion, of raw passion, of everything that made Bubba Watson such a compelling figure in golf. But this was just one chapter in a career filled with incredible highs, unexpected controversies, and a personality that made him as beloved as he was polarizing, because he went on to do it again. Winning one Masters can be seen as a lucky break. Winning two, that puts you in elite company. And in 2014, Bubba Watson proved that his first green jacket was no fluke. Heading into Augusta, Bubba was already a fan favorite, known for his unorthodox game and fearless shot making. But this time, there was no miraculous hook shot from the trees, no sudden death playoff, no desperate scramble. This time, he was calm, cool, and collected. This time, Bubba dominated from start to finish. The defining moment of the tournament came early in the final round on Sunday. Paired with a 20-year-old Jordan Spieth, Bubba trailed by 2 strokes after 7 holes. But then, on the par 5 8th, he launched a 366-yard drive, leaving himself a simple wedge into the green. Birdie, tie game. Then, on the very next hole, Spieth faltered with a double bogey, while Bubba made a solid par. Just like that, he took the lead and never looked back. Unlike 2012, where he had to pull off the impossible to win, 2014 was all about control. Bubba played smart, calculated golf, using his power and creativity to overwhelm Augusta National. He finished with a 3-stroke victory, earning his second green jacket in just 3 years. With that win, Bubba Watson had officially arrived. He was no longer just the long-hitting showman. He was now a multiple-time major champion, a player with a legacy at Augusta, and one of the most recognizable figures in the sport. But for all his talent and success, Bubba's personality would soon take center stage, leading to one of the most controversial and unpredictable careers in modern golf. Going into 2015, Bubba didn't slow down. That year, he returned to his original stomping grounds at the Travelers Championship. He got the chance to relive the nostalgia of the tournament that he got his first ever PGA Tour win 5 years earlier. This was a full circle moment. This was his homecoming after so many years of loss, pain, discipline. This was one of the most obvious games that showed off how much he had grown as a player. This wasn't the same Bubba who was banking on raw talent and unrefined instincts. He was a whole different beast, and no one stood against him. During this stretch of his career, Bubba's aggressive, fearless style made him one of the most consistent winners on tour. His ability to bomb drives, shape shots, and apply a level of creativity that is rare even among pros put him in contention almost every time he teed up. With another signature victory under his belt, he continued his climb up to 3rd place in the official World Golf Ranking. For Bubba, success was never about playing by the book. He had built his career on instinct, feel, and self-belief. And in 2015, those instincts were at their peak. He wasn't just a fan favorite anymore. He was one of the best golfers on the planet. For all the drama surrounding his career, one thing was always true. Bubba Watson knew how to have fun. While many golfers took themselves too seriously, Bubba embraced the entertainment side of the sport, leaning into his quirks and larger-than-life personality. This was most evident in the Golf Boys, a parody boy band made up of Bubba, Ricky Fowler, Ben Crane, and Hunter Mahan. Dressed in ridiculous outfits and performing a music video that no professional athlete should ever be a part of, the Golf Boys became an instant viral sensation. Fans loved it. Other players loved it. Even casual sports fans who had never watched a round of golf suddenly knew Bubba Watson's name. Their debut single gained over 8 million views on YouTube and gave birth to a sequel that hit over 5 million views. And that wasn't the only time Bubba went viral. His love for gadgets and custom vehicles made headlines just as often as his golf game. He bought the original General Lee car from the Dukes of Hazzard, making him one of the few pro golfers with a classic muscle car from a 1980s TV show. He showed up to tournaments in a hovercraft golf cart because walking, or even using a normal cart, apparently wasn't enough for Bubba. He loved pranking his friends and fellow golfers, once even filming a fake Bubba Golf infomercial just to mess with people. For years, Bubba Watson was one of the most relatable and entertaining figures in golf. He wasn't trying to fit in. He wasn't trying to be like Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson. He was just being Bubba. But while fans loved his humor and unpredictability, there was another side of Bubba Watson, one that wasn't always easy to get along with. Bubba Watson's personality made him entertaining, but it also made him polarizing. Unlike most players who carefully manage their public image, Bubba often spoke his mind without a filter, and while that honesty could be refreshing, it also led to controversies, feuds, and moments that alienated both fans and fellow players. One of the biggest examples came at the 2014 Waste Management Phoenix Open, known for its rowdy crowd and party-like atmosphere. Most players embraced the chaos, but Bubba, he openly criticized the course and event, saying the only reason he played was because of his sponsors. That didn't sit well with the Phoenix crowd. The next day, he was booed on every hole. Then there were his on-course outbursts. Bubba was known for losing his temper, particularly with his caddies. His longtime bagman Ted Scott was often on the receiving end. In one infamous moment at the 2013 Travelers Championship, Bubba angrily blamed Scott for giving him the wrong yardage, sarcastically muttering, "Great job, Teddy." The exchange went viral, reinforcing the idea that Bubba wasn't always easy to work with. Even in press conferences, Bubba's blunt honesty rubbed some people the wrong way. Unlike Tiger Woods, who gave carefully calculated answers, Bubba was raw and emotional. Some loved it, others found it off-putting. As time went on, Bubba's reputation became more complicated. He was still a fan favorite, still one of the most electrifying players in golf, but his attitude and emotions were starting to overshadow his talent. By 2017, Bubba Watson's game started to slip. The same player who had won 2 Masters in 3 years now struggled with inconsistency, confidence, and mental battles. His high-risk, high-reward playing style had always been difficult to maintain, but now it was catching up with him. His struggles weren't just physical, they were mental. Bubba started speaking openly about his anxiety and emotional challenges, admitting that there were days when he didn't even feel like competing. At times, he even considered retirement. In 2018, he showed flashes of his old brilliance, winning the Genesis Invitational at Riviera Country Club. But after that, his performances became more erratic. One week, he'd be in contention, the next, he'd miss the cut entirely. By 2021, Bubba Watson was no longer a major threat in big tournaments. His driving distance was still elite, but his putting and iron play had declined. He was still capable of magic, just not often enough to keep up with the game's younger stars. And then came the biggest decision of his career. In 2022, he left the PGA Tour for Live Golf, the Saudi-backed league offering massive contracts to top players. His reported deal was worth over $50 million, but with that payday came intense backlash. Fans who had once cheered for Bubba now called him a sellout. Live Golf was seen as a direct attack on the PGA Tour, and for many, Bubba's decision felt like a betrayal. The format was different. Only 54 holes, no cuts, guaranteed paychecks. Critics said it wasn't real competition. Others pointed to Saudi Arabia's human rights record, arguing that players like Bubba were just helping the country sports wash its reputation. Bubba defended the move, saying it gave him financial security and more time with his family. But no matter how he justified it, his reputation had permanently changed. Bubba Watson will always be remembered as one of golf's great outliers, a self-taught, instinct-driven shotmaker who played the game his own way. 2 Masters titles, some of the wildest shots the game has ever seen, and a personality that made him as unforgettable as he was unpredictable. Some will celebrate his brilliance, others will criticize his controversies. But one thing is certain, Bubba Watson never fit the mold, and he never wanted to. For more documentaries of golf's legends, take a swing at that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.